On a bitterly cold Chicago morning, a piercing cry echoed across the company parking lot. "Don't get in the car!" It came from a 12-year-old black boy, the janitor's son, someone nobody ever paid attention to. Executives froze, security rushed forward, and the CEO turned in confusion. Why would a child scream with such desperation at a luxury car in broad daylight? What was hidden beneath that polished Cadillac? And why did his warning leave an entire company on edge? For years, Angela Johnson's life had followed the same quiet rhythm. She was a night janitor at Wallace & Company, real estate in downtown Chicago, a towering glass building filled with polished suits and high-powered deals. While the executives went home to warm dinners and comfortable lives, Angela scrubbed floors in silence, her work unseen and her presence unnoticed. 15 years of service, and yet, most of them couldn't even remember her name. Her 12-year-old son, Jamal Carter, often waited for her during long night shifts, finding ways to pass the time in the company's maintenance corridors. He was a curious kid, sharp-eyed, restless, and far more aware of his surroundings than anyone realized. To most people, he was just the janitor's boy. To Angela, he was her reason for pushing through every exhausting night. That winter had been especially harsh, the kind where the Chicago wind cut through every layer of clothing. On mornings after her shift, Angela would bundle Jamal up before stepping into the icy parking lot. The world still dark and quiet as the city stirred awake. Nothing about those mornings ever stood out. But on one particular Thursday, everything shifted. Jamal's eyes caught something unusual in the shadows of the garage, something that made his stomach twist with fear. He didn't have proof, not yet, but he knew what he saw was dangerous. And when the moment came, his voice would shatter the silence of that parking lot and force powerful men to pay attention to the boy they had always ignored. Finally, that Thursday morning, the Wallace & Company parking garage was unusually still, a silence that felt heavy. Angela had just finished her shift, her shoulders aching from hours of work no one noticed. Jamal trailed beside her, yawning, rubbing his hands together against the cold. To most people, it was just another morning. But Jamal's eyes kept darting toward the black Cadillac parked near the exit, Richard Wallace's car. Something about it felt wrong. The night before, Jamal had sneaked through the garage while waiting for his mother. That was when he saw them. Two strangers lingering where no one belonged. One was tall, bald, with a snake tattoo curling up his neck. The other had a deep scar cutting across his forehead. They weren't there to visit, and Jamal knew it. He had watched, hidden behind a column, as they crouched under the CEO's car for nearly 20 minutes, whispering in low voices. He couldn't hear everything, but one phrase stuck. After Thursday, he'll fall in line. He wanted to tell someone, but who would listen to him? He was just a janitor's kid. No one cared what he thought. Still, the images burned in his mind all night. The tools in their hands, the glint of wires, the smirk on the scarred man's face. Now, as the CEO approached his Cadillac, briefcase in hand, executives around him chatting casually, Jamal felt panic surge through his chest. He didn't think. He just ran. His voice split the air. "Don't get in the car!" Everyone froze. Security guards lunged toward him, treating him like a threat. Executives muttered in irritation, dismissing him as some kid causing trouble. Even Wallace frowned, confused, more annoyed than alarmed. But Jamal's trembling body, the desperation in his voice, made him pause. Breathless, Jamal blurted out what he had seen, the tattoo, the scar, the men under the car. His words tumbled over each other, desperate and urgent. Security rolled their eyes, insisting the boy was imagining things. But Wallace, against all instinct, ordered them to check. When they looked beneath the Cadillac, the color drained from their faces. Wires. Timer. A device strapped to the ignition, set to detonate at exactly 8:45 a.m., the time Wallace always left for his Thursday meetings. Shock rippled through the garage. Executives stepped back, whispering in disbelief. Security scrambled, and Wallace just stared at the boy who had stopped him from turning that key. But Jamal wasn't finished. He remembered more, the overheard conversation about the Riverside Towers project, the one that would displace hundreds of working-class black families on the South Side. He remembered seeing a familiar face in the shadows that night, a man in a suit, someone he had recognized. Jamal hesitated, but the memory gnawed at him. It was Thomas Whitaker, the company's vice president. He had greeted the strangers like friends. The air in the garage thickened. If Jamal was right, this wasn't just about a bomb. It was about betrayal inside Wallace and Company. A conspiracy rooted in money, power, and the voices nobody wanted to hear. And at that moment, Richard Wallace realized the janitor's son wasn't just saving his life. He was exposing the darkest truth inside his company. The next morning, Wallace and Company was buzzing with tension. Investors, executives, and reporters crowded the grand conference hall for a high-profile meeting. On stage, Thomas Whitaker stood tall, smooth words flowing as he painted himself as the company's savior. With Wallace absent from the opening, whispers spread. Was the CEO stepping aside? Whitaker's moment had finally arrived. But just as he moved to unveil his grand pitch for Riverside Towers, the massive projector screen flickered to life. Not charts, not glossy images of skyscrapers, emails, wire transfers, recorded calls, and standing near the control booth, Jamal Carter, the janitor's son, in an oversized suit jacket borrowed from Wallace. The room erupted. Whitaker froze as his own words echoed through the speakers. Promises of payoffs, instructions for the accident, and proof of $250,000 wired to hired criminals. Faces in the crowd shifted from shock to horror. For years, Whitaker had dismissed Angela and Jamal as invisible, just the cleaner and her kid. Yet now, in front of the city's wealthiest investors, it was their truth that brought him down. Wallace stepped onto the stage, his voice steady, his presence undeniable. The betrayal was undeniable, the evidence irrefutable. Whitaker tried to stammer a defense, but the doors burst open. Federal agents swarmed in, moving quickly through the stunned audience. Cameras clicked, pens scribbled, and reporters shouted questions. The vice president of Wallace and Company, once untouchable, was dragged away in handcuffs. In that electric moment, silence fell over the room. All eyes turned not to the disgraced executive, but to the boy who had stopped a murder and unmasked a conspiracy. The janitor's son had brought an empire to its knees. In the days that followed, Wallace and Company would never be the same. With Whitaker behind bars, the headlines focused on the scandal, the conspiracy, and the collapse of Riverside Towers. But inside the company, the real change was quieter and far more profound. Angela Johnson, once invisible in the shadows of night shifts, was promoted to night operations supervisor with a pay raise that finally matched her years of dedication. For the first time, she walked through those gleaming glass doors not as someone overlooked, but as someone respected. And Jamal? He became more than the janitor's boy. Wallace, deeply shaken yet inspired, named him a special consultant for internal security. Armed with his sharp instincts and curiosity, Jamal introduced what he called the Total Visibility Protocol, a system built on the idea that the most ignored workers often see the most. Maintenance staff, janitors, guards, all were now treated as eyes and ears, a vital part of protecting the company. Months later, Jamal stood at the front of a boardroom filled with visiting executives. In his oversized suit, he explained how listening to the overlooked had already prevented multiple sabotage attempts and saved millions. He wasn't just a child anymore. He was a voice no one could ignore. But beyond one company, the story carried a larger truth. How many warnings have been silenced simply because they came from the wrong mouth, the wrong skin, or the wrong social class? How many lives have been lost because privilege decided whose voice mattered? Jamal's scream that cold morning didn't just save a life. It forced an empire to listen. And maybe, just maybe, it's a reminder for all of us. The voices we ignore today may be the very ones that could save us tomorrow. What do you think? Should more companies start listening to the voices they've ignored for so long? If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps more people see stories that matter. And make sure to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories that uncover the truth society often tries to silence.